everyone and welcome to GST with Sharda, and in this particular video we are going to talk about one of the important recommendations which have been given in the 52nd GST Council meeting regarding bus transportation services. So let's quickly understand what exactly is this e-commerce operation all about. So as we all know, usually a forward charge mechanism is where the supplier pays the tax liability, and a reverse charge mechanism is where the recipient pays the tax liability. And the section 9 subsection 5 talks about a third person who is going to pay the tax liability, who is actually the e-commerce operator. If I had to give you some of the examples, it goes like this: Swiggy, Zomato, who's actually holding the responsibility to make the tax payment when it comes to the restaurant services which are ordered through their online platform. Now here the supplier is actually the restaurant and the recipient is the customer, whereas it's only the Swiggy, Zomato, that is the e-commerce operator, who has the responsibility to make the tax liability payment. So very similarly we have other categories also, like passenger transportation or this housekeeping services and hotel accommodation services. So with effect from 1st January 2022, when it comes to this bus transportation services, the liability has been similarly shifted to the e-commerce operator. If we have to give some example, it is like this Abibus or Redbus, wherein if you want to book an omnibus for your transportation of the passenger, which is the bus ticket if you want to book there. So what happens here is the tax liability is being collected by the e-commerce operator, who is this Redbus or Abibus, and they are the one who is going to deposit this tax liability with the government. Whereas the actual supplier of the services will be that bus operator, isn't it? So this has been already operational with effect from 1st January 2022, and the background behind why this kind of tax liability has been structured is only based on the representations from that industry. Now what exactly was that representation? There are a lot of small players in this bus transportation services. They may be probably owning just 1 or 2 buses as well. Now, when the tax liability is the responsibility of those kind of bus transporters, the responsibility is very huge, and that unnecessarily poses a lot of tax compliance burden on them. And hence, to centralize lot of such tax compliance responsibilities, the responsibility for tax payment has been shifted to the e-commerce operator, as I said in the example, Redbus or Abibus. So here, if a passenger is going to book the bus ticket, the passenger will actually pay the bus ticket along with the GST, and that gets collected by this e-commerce operator, and the e-commerce operator is only responsible for the payment of taxes. Now, what exactly was the issue further? Here, the issue is that there are some large players who are the bus transport operators. So, they may be running a lot of buses, and they may be constantly purchasing buses, and they may be flying them. Now, they are unable to take the input tax credit majorly on the purchase of buses and also on their other expenses as well. Right now, the problem here is that these bus transporters are not going to pay the outward tax liability, and hence they are not able to take the input tax credit also. And again, on these kind of bus purchases, the e-commerce operator cannot also take the tax, the input tax credit, because the purchase is not made by them. So this unnecessarily increases the cost of the bus ticket as well, apart from creating a huge cost for the bus transporters. So to cut down this kind of issue, the government has now proposed, the GST Council has now proposed to go for a dual model of operation. Now what is this dual model of operation? We in fact have it already even in this hotel accommodation cases. So what happens in terms of this hotel accommodation is that if the hotel is actually a registered one, they are only going to pay the tax liability, and only if they are not registered, the e-commerce operator, say for example MakeMyTrip or Agoda, they are going to pay the tax liability. Now similarly, they are also going to make a dual model of operation when it comes to this bus transportation as well, wherein the criteria what is mentioned in the recommendation is the companies, which means wherever the bus transport operator is actually, that is the supplier of this services, is company, then they can take the registration and they can pay the output tax liability. And again, as they are going to pay the output tax liability, they are also eligible to avail the input tax credit as well. Now when it comes to the non-corporates, that's how it sounds like from the recommendation. Other than companies, they are going to continue to operate that e-commerce model, wherein it is only the e-commerce operator who is having the responsibility for the payment of taxes. This is going to be a dual model of operation, very similar to how we have it in the hotel accommodation cases. But having said that, right now we only have the recommendation and the press release in hand. We need to await for the actual notification to be released by the CBIC. Only then we will get to know better on the on how the criteria is being framed, whether it is based on the registration or is it based on the corporate legal entity, or how it is going to be structured. We need to await for the notification. But having said that, right now all that we need to be aware of is that there is going to be a shift in the way in which the tax liability is currently being paid in the case of these kind of omnibus transport operation. So let's wait and watch for the notification which is going to be released soon. Stay tuned for more GST with Sharda.